I was in a company that was quite toxic.
Generally backstabbing, which I have faced myself too.
Colleagues shouting at me.
Feelings of alienation.
What if you don't trust the HR? There's really no one you can speak to already, ma.
For some of us, work can be a complete nightmare. I mean, we've all heard of horror stories, right? Bad bosses, toxic workplace culture, office drama, all these things sometimes even packaged as tough love. But what actually is toxic, and what can we do if we find ourselves in a bind? We're here today with Rafia, a therapist who has tons of experience in this area.
Rafael, before we go into the specific scenarios, we have some questions for you first. What do you think constitutes a toxic workplace?
It's a workplace where it's not life-giving. Or in other ways, you would say it's a place where life stops. You are often in a state of where your threat response system is activated. So each time you're entering your workplace, you're on alert, either of threat or a feeling of like you're going to be triggered.
Like you feel like you might get into trouble anytime.
Yes.
Sometimes a very harsh work environment is also packaged as tough love, like bosses saying that they're being tough on you because they want you to grow. But how do you draw the line between tough love and a toxic environment?
First of all, the phrase tough love, it's been overused to mask the inadequacy of someone who's able to be firm and caring at the same time. Secondly, with toxicity, there is an element of prevalence of negativity. So if you're being tough, but you're not negative, okay, I think there is some grey area that you may not be toxic. But if you're tough with negativity, there is shame involved, there's name calling, there's this need to instruct more like downwards rather than on a level playing field, then you know there is quite a bit of toxicity already present. You feel you're so constricted inside that you have the inability to voice out opinions, you have the inability to communicate, and you kind of find yourself hiding, like in inverted commas. You're no longer yourself.
But what are some cases that you see most often when your clients come into you?
If you have a supervisor, it's clear that your supervisor has certain rights over asking you to do within the job scope. What would be busting the boundaries would be getting you to do work after office hours. Basically, you're seen as someone who has energy, stamina, and this is a steep learning curve.
And then they frame it as a rite of passage.
I guess it's the idea of like paying your dues, right? Like we hear that a lot.
Sometimes it's what's been done to them is done to others.
Since I went through it.
Yeah, inherited kind of toxicity. Like, I learned it this way, so it's my turn to pass off this to you.
One time I had a conversation with some friends and we described one of their workplaces as a toxic boyfriend. There's a lot of gaslighting, and then you feel like, oh, you can't leave because you just have to wait for the next like promotion cycle. Do you feel like actually there is some similarities?
How much you tolerate abuse, how much you tolerate oppression in your personal life can actually play out in your professional life. And for those who have grown up healthily, they are quicker to find out a certain workplace doesn't work for them. A lot of clients who come for counselling, 90% of the time they feel that the problem is them. Like there's something wrong with me, why am I not fitting in? Is it I'm not competent enough? So a lot of question and a lot of self-doubt will start to develop. And that's when I gently have to tell them, it's a two-way traffic. So sometimes, yes, something that you are putting out that people are catching on, but sometimes it's also being done onto you. Like external factors, environment. It's very good to read up on what are some of the labour laws out there. And places like TAFEP, what are good employment or work practices? Because you want to go in with your eyes open. You have a right to ask, you have a right to question, you have a right to also discuss. There's no such thing as I'm a newbie, I need to do whatever anybody asks me. No, there's no such thing.
Really?
Really?
Actually, no, but that's a real question though. The really is real. Like I remember on my first day, I'm like, I'll do anything. Like, because you just don't know.
Oh my God, same. When I first started working, I was like, okay, I'll do it.
Yeah, like you don't deserve better because you haven't
can
earned
say
it
no,
yet, right?
Oh, can say no, man.
Actually, once I've even voiced concern about something that happened at work, and then someone told me, oh, if you don't accept it and if you speak out against it, then you'll show that you're not cooperative.
Oh my God,
and you should just stay silent and accept whatever is happening. Yeah, that's how you will succeed. Yeah.
This is a very subtle, passive-aggressive way of bullying into teamwork. You're not a team player.
I feel like when you're working, it's very hard to go against the crowd.
Especially in the first few years. Maybe if you've
Yeah.
like more experience, it's a bit easier.
It's so hard for me to even hear you say first few years. I was like, first few months?
Recently, I just had this conversation with a friend. He was quite new to the company, but what he expected from a mentor was not provided to him. So the mentor actually saw me as competition. And then instead of supporting him, he felt like he was being blocked from opportunities.
It's a very sad reality, but it happens quite a bit. And I think for a person who is going through that, the first thing to do is to first know who are the people that you can actually escalate this to safely. I mentioned the word safely is because I think everyone who's new to a workplace, they are very concerned about being blamed for being the whistleblower or being blamed to be someone who is tarnishing somebody's reputation. So you want to be careful who you share with, but not careful to the point that you don't share. This is again the right of the staff. You were hired for a certain job scope. You were hired to be guided. All this will actually be laid out in the hiring process.
Would the next step be to leave?
I would not recommend leaving because if it's a job that he really wanted and he had worked hard to get there, then I would recommend that he look at maybe TAFEP and get some help externally to see whether he can bring in someone to talk to the company or to go about ways that he can do in the company beyond mentor. And thereafter, after doing a few attempts to solve the problem, it doesn't solve, at least it gives him a lot of experience how to handle this. So leave for a good reason. Leave after trying. Usually, if you leave because you cannot do anything, then the fear will still remain in you. And that's where it will go into trauma and PTSD and it will follow you to your next job.
So like you need some type of closure.
Yes.
I have one friend that right now is contemplating leaving, but every time she attempts to leave, the boss tries to entice her with more like benefits and stuff like that. I think she just feels very scared to leave just because she's so used to the company already and she doesn't know if she can find another job in time.
Tasha's friend has to reflect on what she values. If in the workplace she's not been valued, then no amount of money can bring that back. So she needs to actually have some deep reflection of what is her priority in life at this point. Because toxicity can actually change your personality. It takes a lot of work to bring it back to a shape where the person can be proud again of who they are.
It just makes me realize that these short-term benefits can never compare with the long-term price you pay.
On your
if-
mental health.
And the devaluation of the self, because she already knows that she's not being treated properly, but she's postponing that, which means it's also a part of her that's also tolerating the devaluation of self. And that for me is a bigger concern.
I experienced the more mature colleagues shouting at me, and it wasn't a very pleasant experience. Yeah, and because of that, I experienced anxiety. I didn't know who to seek help from, so I took it all on myself. Yeah, just grit my teeth and face the music. Having gone through therapy before, I think I'm more well equipped with the tools to deal with certain situations better.
Would you say that people should start going for therapy if they even experience a little bit of anxiety, but it's not so severe yet? Like, when should they start to seek help?
So from how Louise described the situation, I have sensed that she doesn't have much of a support system. And in this case, when you don't have a good support system like friends or family whom you can openly, safely talk about, yes, therapy will be the way to go. And I want to dispel some myths around therapy. Therapy is not a place you go when you just have a problem. Sometimes you go there even just to exchange ideas. So sometimes it can be couched in a coaching manner whereby, we're just coaching you through what you want to do with life. So in the case of Louise, she can come to therapy with the intention of what she wants to do with career, and if this is a place where she wants to stay, then she can bring in all these issues. So it can be multidimensional. And then on a deeper level will be to actually look at herself. Maybe the problem was the toxicity in the workplace, but to also to widen her perspective that there are other things that are at play here that's causing her to tolerate so much. Because being shouted at work, there is a clear sign of so many, that's a red flag. That's a
That's
red
a big red flag.
Yeah.
I'm curious, because obviously therapy is not something that everybody has access to. What are some places that young people can seek help?
Most places, you have peer counselors or peer supporters at work. I personally trained a few of them. They can do peer work with you and go through your situations. The other way is reach out to family service centres where they have subsidized rates for counselling. They basically pack the fees according to how much you earn, and in some places you can get pro bono services. A more viable option will be the Employee Assistance Program. A lot of companies have this program. It is where employees are given slots to see therapists. First, it's made readily available. Second, you are not required to report why you're going to see a therapist. You don't need to have a problem to see a therapist. You just allocated a number of slots. So you can use it throughout the year. And then if you need a top-up, you could just approach the HR. If a client needs more than what she's been allocated, I do make a recommendation, and most HR are quite good. They would just top up if it's really a critical case.
So at the end of the day, if there's one thing you take away from this entire conversation, let it be that there is no problem too small to start seeking help for.
Cocoon, and then open up.
Like that? Did you know that people form an impression of you before you even speak? Even if you are not a naturally confident person, Sherin's tips can help you fake it until you make it in professional settings or even in your day-to-day interactions.
Viens tout près de moi.
For more adulting tips, subscribe to our Head Start newsletter. You can find the link in the description below.
Wahoo! Is it over? Thanks for watching!
Bye!